Hey guys, we're back down in the home theater room. Haven't really done a video from down here in a long time. Not much has changed with the setup. We've just kind of been enjoying it as is over the summer. I am going to start the process today of upgrading my XMC-1 to an XMC-2, their Emotiva's latest generation of processors. Took a long time to come to this decision. I'm the kind of person that holds on to gear for quite a long time, and if I do take something out of one setup, I try and repurpose it to another setup. I try and squeeze every last bit of usefulness out of the things that I buy, and I fully expected to do that with the XMC-1. This processor sounds great. It was my first separates that I purchased. Very happy with it. The DACs are phenomenal. I don't see how you could get much better than this. But even with all that, there were a few factors that encouraged me to perform the upgrade. So the first factor was that if I ever wanted to upgrade anything in this setup, I currently have a 1080p projector. If I wanted to buy a 4K projector, if I wanted to add Atmos speakers, I would have to also upgrade the processor. And the most common thing is a 4K projector. I would still need to swap out this guy. And the next factor is Emotiva, for their current XMC-1 customers, are offering a full retail credit towards the upgrade of their newest generation line of processors, and for my case that's going to be an XMC-2. So if you think about it, if I wanted to, let's say, swap out my projector, I would have to find someone to buy this, and after so many years it's unlikely that I would find anyone to give me anything resembling full retail price for it. So it's almost a deal that you can't pass up. Now, when I purchased this particular unit, they were all on sale. They were getting rid of their 1080p units and offering the units with the 4K board already installed. So the savings that I got purchasing this unit are still going to carry forward to the XMC-2, which is pretty good. So the XMC-2 and this upgrade offer have been around for quite a while, and I did hold off purposefully until the new product had kind of stabilized. They got a few revisions of the firmware out and tested, and the room correction has finally gone through a few iterations as well, and is now seems to have a good stable version of the room correction software is out. So the XMC-2 seems like a mature product, ready to not going to have any troubles with it. And I just checked the original shipping box that the XMC-1 came in, and I'm coming up on the 5th anniversary of owning this particular product. So I'm not sure if Emotiva puts a time cap on their on the upgrade offer, but I think it's time to change it out. Now this video is probably gonna extend to a couple weeks by the time I get this unit shipped out, get the new unit in. I want to do the room correction and have a little bit of time, listen to some movies and some music that I'm very familiar with, and hopefully end out this video with a little bit of a review on the new processor. Also going to take this time to clean up some of my cabling back there. I don't know about you guys, but I have a tendency, if I'm trying to just get something to work, I just run cables, and once it works, I just kind of leave them. It is kind of a pain when you have units in the cabinets to go back there and kind of tidy up the cables. So changing this out will give me a good chance to clean up all the cables that are back there, take out any ones that are just kind of back there and not actually doing anything, and yeah, dust underneath the the XMC-1. In terms of improvements, I don't know. I'm kind of one of the reasons I did kind of take a little bit longer to make this call is, you know, the DACs on here are really good, and while the DACs on the XMC-2 are supposed to be even better, I don't know if I don't know how much better they can be. I don't know if I'm actually going to hear a difference. Obviously, it's beneficial for me in terms of the 4K capabilities, the Atmos capabilities. And while I'm not planning on using any of those capabilities now, I'm sure, you know, if I hadn't bought it, eventually one of those upgrades would have been done down here, and then I'd still be swapping out this processor. So as it stands, the XMC-2 is just going to take the place of the XMC-1, and nothing else is really going to change. It's still going to be a 7.2 setup down here with a 1080p projector. Now, I did give everything one last listen before I took it all apart, so yeah. Sad to see it go, but we're getting a new one. Alrighty, into the box. So, yeah, have all the required accessories. Remote. And even the manuals for whoever ends up with this processor next. Like I said, it's been a great unit for me. I never really had any of the troubles that I read about on the forums. Took me, I mean, maybe 4 or 5 tries, sets of measurements before I got a room correction that was really good, and it ended up being the mode that I used most of the time. With the original Dirac, I found the best way to do it on the XMC-1 was to take measurements that spanned about 3 seats of listening position, maybe a little bit more, 3.5 seats of listening position. That gave me the best results, and once I had a good result, I stuck with it. So get this all taped up and ship it out, and that's about it for this part of the video. So we'll pick up with when I receive the XMC-2. Alright guys, we're back. It's about 3 weeks after I shipped the XMC-1 away. Didn't actually take 3 weeks to get the XMC-2 here. It arrived earlier this week, I think Monday or Tuesday. And it took a little while because I'm up in Canada, so I picked the cheapest option to get the XMC-1 back to Nashville. and of course crossing the border, that took a little bit of time. I did, however, pay for the upgraded shipping, DHL Express, to get the XMC-2 to my location. I think it was about an extra $15, but what it did do is save quite a bit on brokerage fees. Typically, I've been burned in the past with brokerage fees when items cross the border into Canada. We typically will ship packages to a border store, and then I'll go and pick them up and then cross the border, and then we just pay the sales tax. DHL Express was good. I think they only charged me $20 in brokerage fees plus the sales tax on what I paid for the upgrade. So $20, considering the border has been closed for a year and a bit, and we have no idea when it's going to reopen, is definitely reasonable. So let's crack this box open. It's really late. I'm wiped out, but it's kind of the only chance I've had to actually unpack this processor. We'll see what I can get done tonight. I'm expecting just to do some very basic speaker setup and maybe set up the inputs. Pretty basic stuff for tonight. We'll leave the more complicated stuff for another day. So let's crack it open, see what's inside. Alright, manuals, that's the mic, USB, remote, All right, there it is, fresh out of the box. I think it's a bit lighter than the XMC-1. Can't quite remember what the weight of the old unit was, but everything looks good. We're gonna get it set up in the cabinet and fire it up. All right, there we are, all hooked up. Probably not the best lighting. So I'm hooking up my 7.2 channel setup and just a few inputs, the USB DAC and my phono player. So for the sub outputs, I'm using the left and right, and I From what I read, I'll be running them in dual mono, so it really doesn't matter which is plugged into which. The old XMC-1 had a stereo sub option, but from what I read, this one doesn't. So if it does, I'll have to kind of trace back which is the left and which is the right one. But for now, dual mono, it doesn't matter which one is which. And using the right surround, right back, and the left surround, left back channels, as well as obviously the front, left, right, and center channels. Okay, on we go here. There's that switch. Cool. Well, there we are. And now, the fun part, configuring everything. Alright, so it's the second day for the XMC-2 setup. Yesterday didn't get too much work done. I ended up setting up, just did the basic setup for the inputs and did a couple of preliminary speaker setups, nothing major. Next is to run through the Dirac calibration, the room correction that comes with the XMC-2. I'm expecting that's going to take at least 2 or 3 days before I get all that sorted out. So I figure I'd give you a little bit of an interim update and how everything's going so far. It's going well. It's pretty straightforward. Very similar to setting up the XMC-1. The one thing I did notice about the XMC-2 right off the bat, set the unit up again with these pretty basic configurations, and actually started listening to a little bit of music, watching some shows. I haven't had the processor here for about 3 weeks, so it was nice to actually watch something on the home theater. And right out of the box, this processor sounded a lot better than the XMC-1. The one memory I do have was similar thing where you're kind of impatient, you want to listen to everything as quickly as possible. And when I first powered up the XMC-1, wasn't too impressed with kind of the sound quality, all the just how it sounded overall. Obviously that all went away after I had everything properly configured and set up. The XMC-1 was a really good sounding unit, but the XMC-2 right out of the package with just the very basic configuration sounded really good. So Emotiva must have kind of adjusted their default settings for a lot of the configurations in the XMC-2, because again, right out of the bat, sounded really good. I also listened to my turntable a little bit, streamed a little bit of music through the USB input. I wasn't expecting any difference with the turntable, and sure enough, didn't hear any different. I usually listen to that in what's it called? Not direct stereo, but reference stereo mode, where the analog signal fed to the volume control and then out to the front speakers with no processing. Essentially, the XMC-2 is just acting as a volume control. It uses the XMC-2 uses the same resistive ladder chip that the XMC-1 uses, so again, no reason to expect any difference in sound quality, and I didn't hear anything. Sounded just as good as the XMC-1. USB input, just on the direct stereo mode, which again is stripped down, no processing, but with the sub crossovers enabled. I didn't really, sounded really good actually. Didn't notice, or at least couldn't pick out an appreciable difference. The XMC-1 was a phenomenally good unit, and it, I really don't know how the XMC-2 could have improved on it, and you know, maybe with time I'll start hearing a little bit more detail. But again, for preliminary listening, XMC-1 and the XMC-2 sound very similar. And again, didn't really expect all that these monumental improvements in sound quality on that front. Now, I did take this opportunity to do some slight adjustments on my front left and right speakers. I was going to do a full, speaker optimization process. There's a good one outlined by I can't remember what the channel is called, New Day Vinyl, something like that. Anyway, you basically taping down the floors and marking off areas, and progressively moving the speakers back towards the wall till you find the ideal listening position. But that would have been very time consuming, and I'm pretty limited as to how far out I can pull these front tower speakers before they enter the danger zone. I have small kids, and if they're sticking out too far from the front wall, unfortunately they become targets for either the kids just bumping into them and running into them as they're running around, or toys that get thrown around or played with could potentially impact the speakers if they're sticking out too far. So I elected just to do a few more measurements and follow the British audiophile. He recommends keeping the speakers a minimum of 1 meter, 3 feet away from any walls, and that's just to minimize the I believe it's to delay the first order reflection by at least 5 milliseconds, so that you don't perceive it as direct sound. And if it's under 5 millimeters, your brain will perceive it as direct sound and kind of cloudy the sound quality. That's the theory anyway. So I ended up pulling the right speaker about 6 inches away from the back wall, and similarly with the left. Unfortunately, on my left speaker, I can't move it. It's under a meter to the side wall, and I can't move it over any without it being placed in front of the screen. So there's always limits to what you can do. Didn't really notice a difference after I moved them a little bit further away from the wall. They still sounded really good. What I did do is I did tow these speakers out a little bit more. They have really good center imaging. It's quite surprising. So in an effort to get a bit more soundstage, towed them out ever so slightly. Sacrifice a little bit of the center imaging in hopes that you get a bit more soundstage. But I haven't really noticed any loss of the center imaging, and soundstage is as good as it's ever been. So hopefully it does something after I've finished up adjusting everything on the XMC-2. So now it's on to direct calibrations. See how long that takes me. No problems. I don't. It's a little more involved of a calibration process. I think there's 17 measuring points when you have it set up for certain configurations. Doesn't bother me. I don't mind spending a bit of time with the unit and finishing those up. So far I'm impressed with the XMC-2. Everything was fairly straightforward to configure. Still looking and thinking about how I'm going to configure the two different presets. It's nice that we can store multiple Dirac configurations. So yeah, a lot of monkeying around with those settings in the future. The one thing that I am kind of missing in the aesthetics is the front panel buttons to change inputs. I actually use those quite a bit to switch between inputs because the processor is fairly close to my my seating position. So typically when I'm switching to USB or my turntable, I'll just use the I used to use the buttons on the front panel instead of hunting down the remote and changing it that way. So a little disappointed that those are no longer on the front face, but other than that, everything looks good. Now the one problem that I did encounter was connecting the XMC-2 to my NVIDIA Shield. I upgraded from a Roku and now use the NVIDIA Shield as a streaming player. I noticed that when the Shield went into sleep mode, then when you try and wake it up, the video doesn't come back on the XMC-2. I don't know if it's a handshaking issue or whatever, but it just never seems to come back unless I turn the NVIDIA Shield off and then turn it back on. It's not really a big deal. I just ended up disabling all the sleep modes that the NVIDIA Shield has on it. I don't particularly like it when the Shield or any other device goes into sleep mode, because typically what will happen is other family members will forget to turn the projector off because they just see a dark screen, and it's really easy to forget to actually turn it off. That being said, another thing I haven't been able to recreate with the XMC-2 was the power on over the HDMI. I used to have the XMC-1 configured so that all I did was turn the projector on. That sent the power up signal through HDMI to the XMC-1, which would then wake up the rest of the components. Haven't quite figured out how to accomplish that on the XMC-2, but if it's there, I'll find it eventually. The other thing I noticed was that when I was setting up the distances for the speakers, if if I was changing anything, then I would go back to the source, whatever was playing in the background. I would get distortion in the particularly noticeable on the vocals or the dialogue. Not sure what was going on there, but all I had to do was change the inputs, just cycle to a different input and then cycle back to the original, and it would resync and everything would be okay. So that's it. Pretty minor issues that I'm encountering, and there's nothing that I can't get around. And yeah, so far so good. So on to figuring out Dirac.